Imagine losing your girlfriend, your best friend, and your sense of self, all in the same night. Not one of them. Not two of them. All three. Gone. In a matter of hours. Most men never recover from something like that. They spend years bitter, angry, and stuck, replaying the same moment in their heads like a song they can't turn off. Some of them drink. Some of them disappear. Some of them just shrink. They get smaller and smaller until the version of themselves that once had dreams is completely unrecognizable. But this man went home. He drove to his mother's house at 2 a.m. He knocked on her door with nothing but the clothes on his back and whatever was left of his pride. And he slept in a basement bedroom that still had his old high school football posters on the wall. And from that basement, with a overheating laptop, $1,200 in his bank account, and a broken heart, he built something worth $40 million. This is the story of Marcus Allen. And before we get to the $40 million, you need to understand just how broken he really was. But real quick, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop it in the comments. Seriously. I want to see how far this story travels. I've had people watch from Texas, from Chicago, from small towns in the Midwest that I had never even heard of, and every single time it blows my mind. So tell me where you're at. And if you are new here and you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button right now, subscribe, hit the bell, and let's get into this. Marcus Allen grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Not rich, not poor. Somewhere in that wide, quiet middle that defines so much of American life, where your parents work hard, your neighborhood is decent, and the future feels like something that's supposed to happen to you eventually, if you just keep your head down and do the right things. He went to Ohio State, studied business, which he chose because it seemed practical, rather than because it set his soul on fire. He graduated with a 3.1 GPA, a few good friendships, and no clear idea of what came next. He got a job in sales operations at a mid-sized logistics company. It paid $52,000 a year. It had decent benefits. It was fine. And fine, that word is important, because fine is the thing that keeps most people exactly where they are for years at a time. Marcus had been with Sarah for 3 years when all of this happened. They had met junior year of college, at a party neither of them had originally wanted to attend. She was sharp, funny, and the kind of person who had opinions about everything, which Marcus had found exciting at first and exhausting later, though he never quite admitted that to himself. They talked about getting engaged. They had looked at apartments together. In Marcus's mind, she was the plan. And then there was Jake. Jake Morrison had been Marcus's best friend since their freshman orientation week. They had been roommates for 2 years, then lived a few blocks apart after graduation. Jake was the kind of friend who showed up to help you move without being asked, who remembered your dad's birthday, who always picked up the phone. He was at every family dinner. He was in every group photo. He was, by every reasonable measure, one of the most important people in Marcus's life. Looking back, Marcus would later say that the signs were there. Sarah getting quieter on nights when Jake's name came up. Jake being unusually available whenever Marcus was traveling for work. Small things. The kind of things you wave away because the alternative, actually believing them, is too painful to sit with. Not until a Tuesday in October. Not until he came home 2 hours early from a work trip that had gotten cut short. Not until he opened the front door of the apartment he shared with Sarah. The apartment was quiet for a moment, and then he heard a laugh from down the hallway. Sarah's laugh. A sound he had loved for 3 years, a sound that in that single second became the worst thing he had ever heard.
The kind of things you wave away because the alternative, actually believing them, is too painful to sit with. He didn't want to believe it, so he didn't. Not until a Tuesday in October. Not until he came home 2 hours early from a work trip that had gotten cut short. Not until he opened the front door of the apartment he shared with Sarah. He had no idea that Tuesday was about to split his entire life into before and after. He noticed the shoes first. A pair of men's sneakers by the door. Nike Air Force Ones, size 11. He knew those shoes. He had been with Jake when he bought those shoes at a mall in downtown Columbus 18 months ago. The apartment was quiet for a moment. And then he heard a laugh from down the hallway. Sarah's laugh. A sound he had loved for 3 years. A sound that, in that single second, became the worst thing he had ever heard. What happened next, Marcus has described in interviews with a kind of eerie calm. He didn't yell. He didn't break anything. He stood in the hallway for what felt like a very long time, though he later said it was probably less than 30 seconds. Then he went back out the front door. He picked up Jake's sneakers. He set them neatly on the welcome mat outside. And he left. He got in his car, a 2017 Honda Civic with a check engine light that had been on for 4 months, and he drove. He didn't know where he was going. He took the interstate heading east and just kept moving because moving felt better than stopping. The radio was off. His phone started buzzing with Sarah's calls around the 20-minute mark. He watched her name light up the screen 7 times before he turned the phone face down on the passenger seat. He drove for almost 2 hours. At some point, somewhere on the outskirts of Columbus, he pulled off the highway and sat in a gas station parking lot. He told himself he was fine. He told himself this wasn't a big deal. He told himself a lot of things that he did not believe. Then he called his mom. He didn't say much. Just, "Hey ma, is it okay if I come over?" She said, "Of course. Come home." It was just after midnight when he pulled into her driveway on Ferris Avenue. The porch light was already on. She opened the door before he even knocked. She had been watching from the window. She took one look at his face and didn't ask a single question. She just stepped aside, let him in, and said, "Are you hungry?" He shook his head. She made him tea anyway. That night, he lay in his old bedroom in the basement, the same room he had grown up in, the same twin bed, the same slightly too low ceiling, and he stared into the dark for a long time. There was a poster of LeBron James still taped to the wall from when he was 15. He hadn't been back in this room in years. Sarah's last words to him, delivered in a voicemail he finally listened to at 1 a.m., were these: "You were always playing it safe, Marcus. Jake has actual ambition. I need someone who's going somewhere." He listened to it once. Then he deleted it. And then he closed his eyes in that basement in his mother's house at 31 years old, and he thought, she's right. The first 2 weeks were not pretty. Marcus would be the first to admit that. He woke up late. He ordered DoorDash twice a day, mostly burgers, sometimes pizza, once an entire pan of cinnamon rolls that he ate alone while watching a documentary about serial killers. He watched 3 full seasons of television he can't even remember now. He texted people back slowly, if at all. He told his boss he had a family emergency and worked from the basement on the days he felt like it, which was not every day. He was grieving. Not just Sarah, because honestly, somewhere deep down he had known for a while that Sarah wasn't it. He was grieving Jake. He was grieving the version of his life that had felt stable and predictable. He was grieving the future he had assumed was coming. Grief takes the time it takes. Marcus gave it about 2 weeks. Around day 16 something shifted. He was cleaning out a cardboard box of old college stuff that had been sitting in the corner of the basement, the kind of box you move from apartment to apartment and never actually open. Inside, under a stack of old textbooks and a broken charger, he found a spiral notebook from his senior year. On the cover, in his own handwriting, were the words, "Business ideas, don't show Sarah." He laughed out loud for the first time since that Tuesday night. He opened the notebook. The idea inside was for a service that helped small and mid-sized businesses, the kind of companies that didn't have full HR departments, manage contractor and freelance worker onboarding, payroll compliance, contract templates, benefits navigation. Marcus had been obsessed with the problem because he had watched his uncle's landscaping company lose 2 great workers to paperwork nightmares. He had spent weeks researching it during his senior year before Sarah had told him it was too niche, too complicated, and too risky for someone without any real business experience. So he had put the notebook in a box and closed the lid. He read through every page that night. And then he opened his laptop, the one that overheated if you used it for more than 40 minutes and had to be propped on a book to keep from throttling, and he started researching again. Not because he had a plan. Not because he believed in himself yet. Just because he needed something to do with his brain that wasn't hurting. His mother noticed the shift before he did. One morning, she left a book on the kitchen table without saying a word. It was a copy of The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, dog-eared, with notes in the margins in her handwriting. He didn't know she had ever read it. He picked it up, read the back cover, and brought it downstairs. He finished it in 2 days. He started making calls on day 23. Old classmates, former coworkers, his uncle's business contacts, people he hadn't spoken to in years. He was not pitching anything yet, he was just asking questions. What are your biggest headaches when it comes to hiring contractors? What software do you use? What do you wish existed? Most people didn't call back. Some said they weren't interested. A few said it was an interesting idea and then went quiet. But a handful of people said, actually, yeah, that's a real problem. That was enough. He had $1,200 in his checking account, a laptop that needed a book under it, a broken heart, and a notebook from 4 years ago. Somehow, and he still can't fully explain this, that was enough to start. The first client found Marcus before he was even ready. His uncle had mentioned the idea to a friend who ran a small construction company in Dayton. The man called Marcus on a Wednesday afternoon, asked him 3 questions about the service and said, "How much?" Marcus panicked, did quick math in his head and said $800. The man said, "Fine. Send me something in writing." Marcus hung up the phone and sat very still for a moment. Then he went upstairs and told his mom. She made him dinner that night, chicken and rice, his favorite, and didn't make a big deal of it, which was exactly what he needed. She just said, "Good. Now do a good job." He did. He spent the next 3 weeks building the onboarding package for that construction company from scratch. He researched Ohio contractor law. He built contract templates. He put together a compliance checklist. He delivered it a week early. The client was happy. He asked Marcus for a referral to another company he knew. Marcus said yes before he even had a business name. He registered the business, he called it ClearPath HR Solutions, in January from the basement on a Tuesday. There was a strange kind of poetry in that. A Tuesday had broken him. A Tuesday put him back together. By March he had 4 clients. By June he quit his job. The day he handed in his resignation, he sat in the parking lot of his office building and called his mom. "I just quit," he told her. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "It's about time." He laughed. He cried a little. He drove home and got back to work. Year 2 was harder than year 1, and he'll tell you that plainly. He brought on his younger cousin Damon as his first hire, paying him $200 a week and whatever was left of the DoorDash budget, and together they made it work in a way that only happens when 2 people are slightly too stubborn to admit they're overwhelmed. They lost a major client in August when the company got acquired and canceled all their vendor contracts. Marcus spent 3 days moping about it. On the 4th day he cold emailed 47 businesses in a single afternoon. 3 wrote back. 2 became clients. He learned something in year 2 that he describes as the most important business lesson he ever got. The setbacks do not mean stop. They mean adjust. Every time something went wrong, a deal fell through, a product feature flopped, a partnership went sideways, Marcus had trained himself to ask one question: what does this tell me? Not, why is this happening to me? What does this tell me? The answers were always useful. Somewhere in year 3 the company stopped feeling like a side project and started feeling like a real thing. Revenue crossed $500,000. They moved out of the basement, a moment Marcus says felt more emotional than he expected, and into a co-working space in downtown Columbus. He hired 3 full-time employees. He started getting inbound calls instead of making all the outbound ones himself. The shift in Marcus personally was just as significant as the shift in the business. He stopped playing it safe. Not recklessly, he was always careful with the finances, always conservative with the runway, but mentally. He stopped apologizing for having ambition. He stopped shrinking his ideas to fit other people's comfort levels. He stopped asking for permission. "Sarah leaving didn't break me," he said in an interview 3 years later. "It deleted every excuse I had been using to make small decisions. I had been playing a smaller game for a long time because I thought that's what you did when you had someone to protect. Turns out I was just protecting my fear." By year 4, revenue was at $2 million. The team had grown to 11 people. They had clients in 8 states. By year 5 the offer came. A private equity firm out of Chicago had been watching ClearPath for 18 months. They came in with a valuation offer that Marcus initially read 3 times because he thought he had misread a decimal point. He hadn't. $40 million. He called his lawyer. He called his accountant. He sat with the offer for 2 weeks, asked every question he could think of, and then, carefully, deliberately, with no fanfare whatsoever, he signed. He was sitting in his mother's kitchen when the final confirmation email arrived. He read it once. Then he looked up at her, standing at the stove making coffee the same way she had made it every morning since he was a child. "Mom," he said. "It went through." She turned around. And she cried. He didn't. He just smiled, The quiet, private kind of smile that belongs to people who have been through something real and come out the other side. He picked up his phone and ordered her a bouquet of her favorite flowers, yellow tulips, for delivery that afternoon. Then he closed his laptop, finished his coffee, and got back to work. People always ask Marcus about Sarah and Jake. He answers the same way every time, with a patience that suggests he has long since made peace with it. Jake is doing fine by all accounts. He works in insurance. He and Sarah dated for about a year and a half before they went their separate ways. There was no dramatic falling out, just the quiet, ordinary ending of a relationship that was never built on anything solid to begin with. Sarah sent Marcus a LinkedIn message in year 4. It was brief, professional, and carefully worded. She congratulated him on the company's growth. She said she hoped he was well. He read it in a coffee shop on a Thursday morning. He thought about it for a few minutes. Then he closed the app and ordered another espresso. He never wrote back. Not out of bitterness. He simply had nothing to say. In an interview with an entrepreneur podcast 2 years ago, the host asked him directly, "Does he ever think about what might have happened if she had stayed?" Marcus smiled. "Every once in a while," he said. "And every time I do, I feel grateful. She did me the biggest favor of my life. I just didn't know it that night in the parking lot." He paused for a moment. The person she thought wasn't going anywhere, he just didn't know where he was going yet. That's a very different thing. Here is what I want you to take from Marcus's story. It is not about the $40 million. I know that's the number that grabs your attention, and yes, it's extraordinary. But that's not the point. The point is what happened in that basement. In the dark, when no one was watching, when there was no reason to believe it was going to work out, when every rational person in his life might have told him to just get back to his normal job and move on, he opened a notebook. He made some phone calls. He started before he was ready. Every single person who has ever built something real has a night like Marcus had. A moment that cracked their life open. A loss, a humiliation, a door that slammed in their face when they thought it was supposed to open. The question is never whether that moment comes. It always comes. The question is what you do with it. Marcus did not chase revenge. He did not post about it. He did not wait until he felt confident or ready or worthy or healed. He just built. Quietly. Consistently. Day after day in a basement bedroom with a laptop on a book. Maybe you've had your basement moment already. Maybe it's still coming. Either way, what you do in that quiet, unseen, unglamorous stretch of time when nobody is watching, that is what decides everything. It always has been. If this story hit different for you, leave me a comment. Tell me which part got you the most. And if you are going through your own basement moment right now, drop a fire in the comments. I see every single one of them, and I want you to know, you are not as far from 40 million as you think. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Next week's story makes this one look like a warm-up. You do not want to miss it. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you next week.